Welcome back to the podcast. My name is Luis Ortega from Excel Marketing, and for today's guest, we have my good friend, my coach, my mentor. He is the founder of Grow B2B. He has sold over three agencies previously, and also the founder of Done For You Meetings, a B2B lead generation agency that helps B2B business owners. Welcome to the podcast, Michael Gardiner.
Yeah, thank you for having me. Looking forward to our conversation.
No problem. Well, Michael, to start things off, I wanted to understand your background. I mentioned a couple of things, how I met you as well.
Sure.
But could you please tell the audience how did you start with like the online money making things? Like, where did this all start? Did you start in this agency? How did it all start?
Yeah, so back in around 2014, it was really easy to grow um, Instagram pages. So I was doing this just kind of for fun, not personal pages, but theme pages, cars, travel, watches, just guns, actually, just things I had interest in. And I was growing these at first just for fun, show my friends, look at the followers I have. And I was very young, I was 14 at the time. And I started getting reached out to by companies that wanted to pay for promotion. And I realized, hey, this is a cool way to make money. At the time, I was considering getting a job, but I hadn't. At 14 is kind of a youngish you can work certain jobs in the US. Most are 15, so I was just starting to think about employment. And sure enough, I figured out, hey, I could sell promotions. And this did essentially three things. First, it had me think about business, which I never thought about before. I don't have a family in business, and also just purely being 14, it wasn't a high priority. Second thing it did was it taught me about outreach, which became a pivotal thing in all my businesses, because I was doing outreach to actually get people to pay for promotions.
Get the clients, yep.
And the third thing was getting me exposure to different businesses. I got exposure to people doing drop shipping, doing affiliate marketing, doing info, doing agencies, doing software, because all these things are brand new. And the way I would learn about these businesses was just people paying for promotions across my accounts. So that was how I fell into the first business. And then over time, it turned from a unorganized or semi-organized hustle into more of an influencer marketing agency.
Yeah, because I would imagine the team pages has its own unique traffic whenever you do that. So for example, I would imagine if you are managing like a team page for cars, more demographic would be boys, and then brands that have like a younger demographic would target you or promote for you, right? So when you mentioned like you been exposed with like different business models, did that kind of open you of like possibilities out there? Because I would imagine when they who are paying for you, you're now getting all these type of money, but then you started to get curious about like, okay, oh, why are they paying me?
Sure.
And then how much are they making when they pay me, right? So like, did you jump into a different venture at that time, or how did it transition?
Yeah, so first thing I did was I tried to create more pages. This business model, by the way, is not completely, 90% irrelevant this time. So what I'm saying isn't advice, but like it used to be pretty easy to grow pages by like 1,000 or 2,000 followers a day. The way Instagram's algorithm used to work is if you got engagement from large pages, they would use that as a way to say this content's good. So if you had a bunch of big pages, you could just grow between them. If then you made friends that had other big pages, and you could spring account to 100K followers in 30 or 40 days. It's very easy. So anyways, that is kind of what I started doing first, just aggressively growing the amount of accounts I had. And at one point, I had about 1 million followers between accounts. That's kind of my peak. But yes, you're right. I got kind of exposed to everything, and I did the mistake that I think everybody makes in business, where it's like, oh, these are a bunch of great ideas. Let's do them all simultaneously. So I did a little bit of drop shipping, did a little bit of affiliate, did a little bit of this and that, and a lot of those made some money. But ultimately, the agency was the main moneymaker, not necessarily due to it being the better business model, but due to it getting the majority of attention.
Okay. And because I've also seen on your even on your Instagram, I think you did you work with Iman Gaji before when he was just starting out like in the SMMA industry?
I purchased this program when it was quite new, but he wasn't a client of mine until, oh gosh, I might be quoting this wrong, maybe 2020, 2021. So he wasn't like I, I guess he was a client before his career became exponential, but I wouldn't say I was super early in his career.
Okay. Okay. So you guys met along with each other. But I guess with like the an advice for the people who are just starting out, like you mentioned like the shiny object syndrome when they're being introduced with like different money making models.
Sure.
And then I guess if you were to go back, are there, if you were to do one change with like how your strategy was made at that time, what would it be?
Given my age, I'm actually glad I screwed around with a dozen different business models. I probably would have made more money if I hadn't, but I got so much exposure to things that I don't regret it.
Mm.
So that answer is to myself as someone who was young that had parents that supported him that didn't need consistency. I'm glad I got all those different skill sets. What the change I probably wish is that I had stopped trying to do too many things at once for such a long period of time. But ultimately, I don't regret it. I take drop shipping. Like I never made much money in drop shipping, but I had some stores that did revenue, and it's like I learned how to take product photos, how to source products, how to do customer support, how to build a website, how to write an ad, how to run an ad. So um, uh, while like by definition it probably wasn't the best thing, and I know it wasn't, the exposure I got from it is not something that I regret.
Absolutely. And I also think on your experience, because we had some similar ones, because I also tried drop shipping, doing some like medium buying clients. But I also think one of the journeys that would really help the ones who are just starting out is the like the process of elimination. Like once you just try out different things, and then I think eventually one will really stick around and one will just eventually click, that that's the one that's making you money, and that's the one you should just continue to pursue. And I guess fast forward to now, you're managing a cold email agency. So how did that transition went?
Yeah, so the way my first few clients is they would reach out to me. And I did continue to have people reach out to me for promotion, but that was a relatively small amount of my overall revenue. So the first outreach I did was doing Instagram DMs from theme pages. If I had a men's fashion page, I'd reach out to men's fashion brands. If I had a watch page, watch brands, car page, car accessory brands.
Yeah.
Um, and then that eventually expanded to email. And part of the expansion to email was Instagram has limitations for DMs in terms of how many. Um, but I started doing email, and then it's like, hey, I can generate business quite easily here. And I continued to do so. And, that process, like jumping from there to my current agency is a long gap in a timeline, but everything in between, including things that failed, I was able to get business by doing outbound messaging. Now I do have a cold email agency now. We do a couple other things beyond cold email, like mail and Upwork, but mainly cold email. But I would say I'm pretty outreach agnostic. I think the fact of why did I do well is I reached out to people. Like if I had chosen, I did a lot of platforms back then, but I think it's the same for door knocking, for phone, for LinkedIn, for Facebook, for Instagram, hell, probably for Reddit or other platforms I haven't used where if you're making continuous, consistent effort to get somebody interested in something that they naturally would have interest in, you're gonna see some traction.
Absolutely. And I guess that's a really good point when you mentioned like the outbound part. Like it's not something that when they say lead generation or just outbound in general, you're not just talking about one channel. You start particularly with one and then move into another one with like cold email. But primarily, you're understanding the basic concept of it is just reaching out to people who are potentially interested in your products. Now, talking about like cold email right now, because I think you've been with like managing done for you meetings for a couple of years now. Could you tell us like the difference between like the what was cold email like before? Like
Sure.
how easy was it? How did you how were you getting clients? How were you getting them results in general?
Yeah, I think the change in cold email kind of ties directly to a change in business. When I first got into business, I'll answer this kind of two ways. There was less information, and because there was less information, there was also less competition because less people were doing it. So it was harder to start, but it was easier to do well. Cold email is the same thing. There was less tools, there were less courses, it was more manual, it was harder to do, but getting results was significantly easier. Competing with peer people. Exact opposite now. It used to be that there was a lack of information on business or cold email, and if you made it, you would get eyeballs because there aren't many people. Now you can learn everything for free. Everything's immediate. For cold email, there's a million tools, there's a million databases. It's very cheap. It used to be expensive. It used to be quite expensive software. So I was spending at one point over around $12,000 a month on cold email software. So I used to bill people by the email address, not just like a flat rate. So the opposite now, where technically it's relatively easy. The tools are there, the resources are there. You can pay for help, which obviously you can accelerate things. But realistically, if you want a piece of your information, you can find everything you want for free on YouTube. Um, but the difference is 10,000 other people know that, and 10,000 other people are doing the same thing. So it's just purely noise when it's made not just cold email, but every outreach channel, ads, business,
Yeah.
a lot harder because it's easier to get started and easier to learn.
Absolutely. And would you say I'm seeing that the saturation is definitely growing in terms of like the industry. But would you say it's a good thing that everything is there now? The masses, the information is available to the masses, but only the few ones can really execute it well, and those are the ones that could really get the results. Or how would you? What's your thoughts on the saturation going on with like the industry since we're there's a lot of people coming in and the barrier to entry is really low now.
Yeah, so two things there. First thing you mentioned is the barrier to entry is low. For some businesses, where the barrier is high, not much has changed. Like for example, I have some clients for cold email where they're selling medical devices. Like, yes, I don't know if it's any easier to start a medical device manufacturing company now, but regardless, your average retard is not going to figure out how to do that. Your average retard can figure out like put together a shitty agency website, send some emails though. So what I see mainly is that it's not so much competition in the amount of competent agencies, it's noise. What that means is if you're a great agency, it gets great results, you will struggle to get clients just out of noise, meaning there's 95% of people that don't know how to do a service, that will lie about a guarantee, that will fabricate case studies, and it's hard to differentiate yourself from them. But once you have a client, because there's so much incompetence in the market, and some people they get one client and churn and burn them, but I think retention isn't necessarily that much harder.
Mm,
So to actually grow a company, I don't think it's terribly more difficult, but in terms of noise, it can be hard to distinguish that hey, I'm not an idiot.
absolutely. That's a really good point. Like when so a ton of people are reaching out pitching the cold email offer now, but once you really get to keep a client and you know what you're doing and then you're actually getting the results, they're gonna stay with you. And that's where the real competitive agencies will strike through. Now, speaking of the client wise, but like cold email, let's talk about industry wise. Like, what have you seen has been the most cold email difficult offer that you experienced with your clients?
So most difficult offer. I'll have two answers here. The most difficult offers are normally the ones with the lowest barrier to entry, because there's the most noise. So like take agency offers, because anybody can start an agency for free, right?
Yeah.
Where if somebody does something that's significantly harder to get into, there's gonna be less competition. Now, the overall, the worst possible thing itself, cold email, maybe health insurance,
Health insurance.
business, like sketchy business loans,
Mm.
health insurance. Because like insurance, like I think everybody hates insurance, and maybe it's just me projecting, but like I would say I hate most people that work in insurance because I hate insurance so much. I hate them as a byproduct. Um, it's pretty hard to cut through it, or like sketchy business, high interest business loans. Like those are pretty impossible to get results for. Like not to say you can't, but it's quite hard.
Absolutely. And also I think what you've said there was really interesting because if there are a lot of people doing it as well, like the I mean what's because I imagine cold email as someone you're approaching cold up front, right? So like if that's something that you really have to explain and they have to kind of understand it before they say yes to. So kind of like that's why I'm wondering what your thoughts are with like intro offers is what they call it, where if they have like a huge offer they place like a dummy
Sure.
or like a front end offer that they go to. What's your thoughts on that?
Yeah, certainly can work. We've had a lot of clients do it. You know, maybe we have a client that has something that's a good service, but it's competitive. Let's say, like, random example, email marketing for e-commerce. That's very competitive with cold email. But maybe they have some interesting front end offer, which is like an SMS offer, or it's some type of like community building offer, whatever it may be. Sometimes it's a paid offer, other times it's an audit, although audits tend to be an overused and untrusted word. So normally an audit is camouflaged in some other lingo, but ultimately is an audit. But yeah, absolutely. Also, if your sales is incredibly expensive, it makes sense. You know, we have a client that does sales consulting. Their packages start around 50,000 and go up from there. We're not gonna get on a sales call with someone they've never talked to, pitch 60K. They have an intro offer just around $5,000.
Absolutely. And this is even similar to the strategy that I've been telling Michael when we're doing calls. Like even for my own agency, I've been doing like a kind of like an intro offer where hey, just try it out. Let me get the feedback once you receive it. And I guess Michael, let's jump into like the service process once that someone has partnered up with you as your client. So let's do an exercise. Once a client starts to come in, what are the main things that you have to prepare whenever you just signed a contract with them? Okay, what's next?
In terms of onboarding specifically for cold email or more broad client retention?
Onboarding specifically, the process was.
Yeah, our onboarding process beyond payment and contract, we have an onboarding form people go through. Um, Ask them about their story, their business story, examples of clients, who they want to work with, who we don't want to work with. We get specific into ICP in terms of titles, demographics. From our onboarding form, we normally do a kickoff call. You know, one thing that you'll find is a lot of times a business owner is so used to their business that they neglect is not the right word. They don't consider that someone else may not be as familiar with it. So we try to take that onboarding form and really press them on the questions
Yeah.
because often they'll tell us information that they didn't on onboarding form because it's common knowledge to them or it's just something they wouldn't consider.
Yeah.
So we try to press as much information as we can. Normally from there, we strategize campaigns. We do all of our cold email campaigns based on a segment. So a very specific persona. Maybe we're targeting dentists that are running ads, or we're targeting a software company that received funding. It's a very specific persona. So we'll decide on what those are with the client. Once we have those approved, we build lists, we write scripts, we get approvals, and we run campaigns. And then normally that first 30, 45 days of campaigns running, we're trying to figure out which of those segments is ultimately going to be successful and sustainable, and then we put more volume into working segments.
Absolutely. And you mentioned something about your strategy was when building out the campaign. So like how does the ideation process go once you receive the information that the business owner submitted to you? So like how does the ideation begin with? Or how do you from like the information that they submitted to you, how do you formulate them into like segments?
At this point, just experience. Again, part of my first business having exposure to a million different things and trying a lot of things, and yeah, we skipped through a few businesses in the middle there. Um, just it's just top of head. Like I don't think it's just I just know. Now a more practical answer is you could probably break down all the campaigns you run into like 10 core categories and then think of sub branches. But the way we do it specifically, it's maybe less of an actionable answer is experience.
Yeah. And what I guess this is coming from like someone who already spoke to you about ideation. I think one of the lessons I like with what you said was just searching them on like a normal person, like
Yeah.
browsing them on Google, seeing them what they look online, how does the presence look like? Like if you were to purchase your client service or product, how would you go at them? Like would you search them here, here, and here? And kind of compiling like the little bits of information and then using your cold email expertise now, okay, like knowing this information, who are the people that can benefit from this now, and then using those as a segment. That's one of the lessons that I've definitely implemented on you. But you mentioned what like experience wise, so you had multiple experience with like different clients. Let's talk about like the client communication side. how often do you guys communicate with like client? And then would you agree that the more communication is the better for the client?
Yeah, generally, the more communication, the better, which is part of the reason you shoot yourself out of communication because communication is not productive for teamwork. Um, but yeah, generally speaking, for clients, the first month, 2 months, we're trying to communicate as much as possible. Even when not much is going on, we want to make sure you know every little thing that does happen. A lot of times, you can lose a client not because you didn't do anything, because your client didn't know that you were doing something as you failed to communicate it. So we're always trying to make it really clear what we're working on. Now, at some point, we feel out what the client wants. Some clients are ones where they genuinely don't want to hear from you more than once a week.
Mm.
Um, and we just kind of go by feel at that point, you know.
Yeah.
Also, we generally do calls in addition to chat. How frequently our calls are, again, depends on the client, how much they're paying us, their personality type, but normally somewhere between 2 to 3 calls a month.
Okay. 2 to 3 calls. That's actually a lot more than what I'm expecting. But hearing what you just said with like client communication wise, when there's nothing really going on with like the clients, or how do you properly set up the expectations with like the clients? This is from just starting out versus when you're already, you've gotten them results, but you kind of have this dead period when there's no results for like a couple of weeks.
Yeah, you could just communicate ideation. Like, here's what we're thinking. What do you think of this? What are your ideas of this? Like, at the end of the day, if you don't want an update, ask them a question. You
Mm.
know, it's not. It's kind of funny. It's like, oh, I don't know what to say. Ask them something. You know, just that fills space.
Actually, that's kind of funny because even with like the communication side of things, like once you're properly communicating with them, you're starting. Do you feel like, or do you think that the communication, because I've heard and I've experienced this a lot. Even when there's nothing going on, when like you've communicated properly, I thought when we were doing the monthly check-in call with them, they were gonna be angry, but they seem fine because I was able to properly communicate. This is what's
Sure.
going on. This is what we're doing. And do you think that's a factor as well when like knowing with like because I imagine from the client's perspective, I pay this person. What are they doing? What's
Sure.
happening right now? You don't see what we're doing on the back end, and then like the client communication part is something as part of it. Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, expectations I think can be just as important as the actual results, especially in the first couple months where you're building things up. It's funny because I've seen people I've worked with where they have a client that they expect to be happy if it's mad, or vice versa. And so that's just people being people, but a lot of it does come down to expectations. I mean, you know, it's a kind of a tacky, overly saying, but under promise, over deliver. Um, Not that it's always possible, but it gives an example. Some people like you'll need if you say, "We'll book you 30 meetings in a month," right, or something crazy like that. Where it's like, yeah, maybe you will, maybe you won't. But a lot of people having clients that are dissatisfied comes back to their own fault, where they just didn't communicate properly.
Absolutely. And Michael, I wanted to create like a let's jump into a fun segment before where we dive into more cold email related questions. So I'm gonna choose a segment in cold email. For example, let's say email sequencer. And then you say one tool that's your favorite. For example, you like to go with Smartly, Instantly, Bison, but the rule here is you only have to pick one.
I can't do that for sending tools.
With sending tools because you're partnered with all of them.
I can say my top two.
All right, let's do with top two. Let's do. What's your favorite sending tool?
Half smartly, half instantly.
All right, and what's your favorite database?
Hollow.
Follow. What's your favorite email verification tool?
Million verifier.
What about catch all validation?
Scrubby.
Scrubby, nice. And what about let's do scraping.
Uh, Instant data scraper.
All right. And what about like cold email guru on YouTube?
It's not me, Matt Lucero.
All right. Cold email groups or community.
Uh, that's not mine. Clay has some good brews. Yeah, Clay has some good free brews in big cities you can go to.
There we go. What about like enrichment tools?
Honestly, this is where I get out of like the film because I haven't built a list in so long. I have a team do it. I don't even know what we're using right now for everything.
No problem. But yeah, I think we've covered pretty much like the client communication. Like where do you
Slack.
want it? Slack. What about if you were to pick with like the email infrastructure, just one provider? Which one?
Google.
Google. All right.
None of the fun shit. Just Google.
This actually, based on what you've answered, you pretty much relied on the basic ones that uh
Uh,
speaking of, so right, when for someone to when you're starting out with like clients using all of those different tools, like would you say there are some overrated ones that you don't really need it, but the market is telling you that uh yeah, this is essential for cold email, you know?
Sure. Rather than overrated, I would say probably two things. One, building a business on like some app sumo, too good to be true database that promises contacts at like a fraction of the price. I love seeing people fail because they choose these. Um, and then the second would be cheaping out and like using like like cheaping out, being lazy, and using only like instant infrastructure setup tools like the 10-cent Indian inboxes that are immediately blacklisted. Not to say there's not some space for like, I'll call it third party infrastructure or non primary infrastructure, but too many people build their business on sand.
Yeah, absolutely. And I guess I wanted to hear your opinions on that. So, like, have you done some testing, or what are your primary concerns when those when relying on those like third party inbox resellers? So, like, have you had any data of this before? Or
Yeah, I mean, some of them have done better than others for us, but all of them go to spam after a few months. And just given the energy and the inconsistencies in client building, if your volume goes up and down, we prefer to say for Google and Outlook directly, domains on GoDaddy and Squarespace. And it's a bit more expensive, but we do well that way. Um, I have a team that has an R&D budget, and I can't tell you the results in every tool because I pay them to not have to know. But they test a lot of its infrastructure setup ones, and some do well, some don't. But I mean, at the end of the day, like, have any of these instant infrastructure tools actually been working for 2 years?
mm,
No.
yeah,
None of them have any history. Not to say that you shouldn't do some R&D, that you shouldn't dedicate a certain amount of your inboxes to them, but I think it's a bad way to build your whole business.
absolutely. I mean, when you think of that long term, I've actually just reflected on mine. Which of those have been mostly consistent? I'm thinking of one, but they haven't lasted with 2 years yet. So I'm gonna come back with Michael on that to check on. But okay, so let's talk about continuing with like once the client onboarded, you get the ideation, etc. Well, like let's tell the audience right now with all of the information happening with cold email, what are the realistic results where they can get like the first few leads? Like how long does it really take timeline wise? This is considering we finish warming up.
10 days, 7, 10 days.
So like 1 to 2 weeks in terms of like sending.
Yeah, yeah, because we have enough data that we're going to have an idea of how well a campaign should work, and we're going to adjust our volume depending on that. So not everybody's getting the same amount of volume. And then second, we have so much campaign data, but it's not like we're writing a script for the first time or building a list for the first time. So 7 to 10 days. Part of the reason we don't do like 3 month contracts is we're good enough that it's either going to work because we're doing things right,
Yeah.
or it's not going to work because the market doesn't want it enough to justify the service, and we're going to figure it out pretty quickly.
That's really interesting because when you mentioned to me that you're not doing like a 3 month contract, but would you say are there any type of pre-qualification you can do as well before like signing the client that you kind of have an idea already and then you can just push for like the quarterly, or what are your thoughts on that?
Your best bet there is just to be around people with a similar business to have data. I mean, when people work with me on a consulting basis, with Grow B2B, that's one of the benefits where I've touched every industry. And when there's an industry I haven't touched, I have my own peer group of guys that also do cold email, like you shoot text too. So uh, that's probably your best way. Because there's some things where I'm like, there's no way there's a market for this, or I think this will work, and it does or doesn't. And it's just hard to say. So, um, yeah, a peer group is a really good idea.
Absolutely. And that's one of the good things too. You mentioned like the community around you and the people around you, because I imagine that's one of the highest or biggest benefits that you're hiring at when you're hiring an agency instead of like a freelancer. Like the freelancer doesn't have enough data compared to like the agencies who's working actively with other clients, right? Because you're seeing what the results are like with them. And another thing is, even though if they're not working with like the similar industries, they have like peer groups. Which, speaking of, I found Michael with like Grow B2B, mainly from his YouTube channel before, and then that's where I hopped on his community. You'll see me there as well with like his one of his YouTube videos. But I wanted to ask you about Grow B2B. So for the audience out there that don't know it here, could you tell us more about how Grow B2B started at the first place?
Yeah, it's kind of funny. So Grow B2B is ultimately an info product. And I was super resistant to having an info product for a very long time. And I kept saying, no, I don't want to do it. No, I don't want to do it. No, I don't want to do it. And a friend of mine who's in the info product space finally convinced me. He's like, there are people less qualified than you that are being paid, and you could do a better job at the same price. And it's unethical not to give it, but there's not that good of information. Like, okay, whatever. So at the time, I had people reaching out to me already. I was just selling hourly consulting, which is it was fine, but it's pretty low leverage. Especially considering most of the questions were the same ones, which like one really good video and document could answer for everybody after. Ultimately, I ended up starting it, and I just kind of casually linked it in my YouTube videos. And it's funny, it's like it's never been a main income stream for me. Out of all the money I've made online, it's probably under 5%. Um, it's kind of just a passion and hobby thing. Like, I do think I'll probably end up growing it more in the future. And it's not to say that info is not profitable. Like it's info. The margins are it's all margin. But at this moment my primary focus is still my agency. Um, and Grow B2B has just been basically things I learned in my agency turned into coaching, what one calls course content, and been packaged and sold to people that read through my YouTube description.
Yeah, absolutely. So, Michael, if ever that you go like full info guru,
Yeah.
would you be one of the guys that posts and picks up their Lambo and Ferraris on their Instagram pages?
Honestly, it's kind of disappointing because I probably would be. Because it's funny. It's like this might sound bad, but like intelligent YouTube videos get agency clients and some info clients, but like I could make a video that's like complete cold email agency fulfillment guide, but it goes like step for step by our onboarding process. It talks about retention tricks. It talks about how we track client fulfillment. It would get some views and it would get a couple calls. If I make a video that's like, here's how we passed 100K a month, or here's how I made $2 million doing this, it's like those get way more traction than info. And that's been one of my like kind of hitting my head in the wall things is like I don't consider myself too showy. I've done all right, but I don't consider myself showy. And sometimes my team is like use big numbers, use big numbers, use big numbers, because the same video with like a different title that does or doesn't mention some monetary, monetary number can perform completely differently. So if I ever go full info, yeah, I probably will be a bit of a dick.
There we go. So we'll be seeing that in in the next few months. We'll see where Michael go to. But speaking of grow B2B, Michael. So I imagine when you're doing like consulting, you kind of had to like structure it where, or even with like your setup offers, I think you kind of have to structure it in a way where you have to pass all of the information to the other business. So I would say that's kind of a good way to transition it to, from like you're not, because what really made me say yes to the Michael's community is like the agency owners out there are, or the coaches are not just someone who's selling it full time for info. Like they're actively doing it because they got clients actively working. So that's one of the great things. But Michael, to tell the audience, if they join Grow B2B, like what are the main things that they can expect there?
Yeah, so in terms of content delivery, we have the course. The way I look at the course, I actually don't love courses myself. I like to learn from communication, with talking, with group calls. But the course answers all the questions that get asked over and over again. As a reference, we have group calls, computer coaches, myself. We have a coach who talks about systems automations. We have another one who talks about list building. Another one talks about Upwork. Other one's coming. We do one-on-one calls, and we have a community for support. So you know, if you're somebody that's looking to do client acquisition, you go to service yourself, it's a great place to get advice. And most of that is done just through conversations. That's how I have to learn. So that's how I teach. Um, I purchase some programs myself, and sometimes if they're too course content heavy, if it's like, here's 100 hours of course content, it's like, well, that's kind of cool, but I'm probably not going to go through that.
Yeah, yeah, and the good thing too with like the more active coaching calls is that you get to ask like the problems that you're experiencing. For example, that week I'm trying to solve this, so I'm gonna go with this call. And I've also said this before. I think on one of Michael's interview with me, but it's a good dynamic that we have here with like Grow B2B. I'm not affiliated. Michael's not paying me for this, but with all of the results and success I've achieved with them, I think it's fair to say that it's kind of working like a yin and yang, where there's the sales guy and the marketing guy. So you kind of have like a fulfillment and operation side, and then when I want to go with like ideation, etc., I go to Michael. So it's a really good thing if you guys want to join. I'll link the Grow B2B down below. But Michael, I guess with like the let's talk about. I wanted to hear your thoughts on this because info side. Okay, what have you seen with like the students you've handled, are the difference between like people who can actually succeed with cold email versus the ones that wouldn't, you know?
Well, first off, thank you for calling that. I'm Ruby to be. So, in terms of success, the first thing to consider with info is it depends who you're selling to. The average person that is joining Ruby to be has a business that's doing somewhere between like $2,000 to $10,000 a month. Now, I have friends that have info products that are like making your first dollar online, and the fail rate of those is so high. Not because the product's bad, but because fail rate on a business is like 98 or 99%. Like most people like the idea of it. So given that people that are joining Ruby to be have already made some money, we very rarely have someone join that's like never made any money. I generally discourage them from joining unless they have like career experience that I think is relevant. So given that we already have some pre-qualification, our success rate is definitely higher. I still think you might be surprised how many people will buy programs and then do nothing. It's interesting because a lot of times I have a sales call with somebody and they're like, yeah, I joined this program, then this program, then this program, and this program, and now I want to join yours. I will still sell it to them. I'm not going to lie, but I will still sell it and say, if you follow this, you will do well. But it's like, I'm not, there's a bunch of programs out there. Now, I think mine's great, but there's other ones that are great too. So it's like, if you manage to go through 5 programs and you still don't have any clients, like, it's probably not the program, so probably decent. Yeah. So you do get some people that I call it course jumpers, and I think for them, they like the idea of a business, and they don't work. So they feels like work to shop for courses and buy them and do nothing. So there's probably 10% of people that have bought Grow B2B that have never watched a video and never booked a call, which is like passive income. So I'm super happy about. But you do get those. Beyond them, I mean, because we have some pre-filtering, the success rate's pretty high. I mean, um, yeah, and part of it too is like I think our success rate is high because of my advertising. Because I don't have flashy advertising and because I don't like run ads, people had to kind of search for it. So I'm also getting like pre-filtered people a little bit.
Yeah.
But yeah, to answer your question, like who does well, normally it's people that implement fast. It's people that come to the group calls and ask a lot of questions. Because like if you're not getting results, you can only do one of two things: either you're not doing enough, or you're not going for a feedback loop. Those are the only two ways you can fail. It's either like take cold email. You're not sending enough emails. Okay, do more. Or you're sending emails and it's not working. Go back to the feedback loop. Why didn't it work? Come to a group call. Book a one-on-one call. So it has to be one of those two things. Yeah. And if people realize that, you're very likely to do well.
I think this is also one of the things I'm experiencing right now. Is like the time between you receive the feedback and the moment you implement it. Because I'm noticing with like myself, I try to go with like questions and then implement it that week as soon as possible. Because I'm only asking the relevant questions for me at that time. And then from what I'm noticing with like other members is like we're kind of I'm kind of remembering that they've asked that already before, and it seems like so was there not like a process of implementation that's why you had to re-ask, or like in your case as the speaker there or as the coach there, what are your what have you been experiencing with those? Yeah.
My job is to answer people's questions if they paid me to, and I try not to judge too hard beyond that. But you are right. I mean, I think more than that, some people like to think too far ahead, and I don't think it's negative reflects on who they are as a person or personality. I think a lot of them are just excited, and sometimes, especially when you're first starting, like 0 to 1 is so hard, so it's a little bit easier to think about 100, right? Because if you're just starting, you have 2 or 3 clients. Like the idea of getting to like 50K a month, 100K a month seems so far away that you can like it's less mentally painful to think about what you would do once you're there as opposed to that middle gap. So I don't think it's necessarily bad or good. It's just some people do tend to think a bit far ahead. But at the same time, I've done it too. I think it's okay to do as long as it's not the only thing you're doing.
Absolutely. Now, Michael, I wanted to jump into a little bit of different topic. How to scale your agency. So, speaking of when we're starting out with like cold email, let's imagine there's a person right here just starting out an agency and is now gaining multiple clients. So, like, what are the first things that you should optimize in your agency once you're gaining more clients? Let's say you're in the 2 to 5 client range.
I think the first things to do are to eliminate personal tasks you don't want to do, cleaning, cooking, um, really basic things like that. I mean, without getting like way too specific on like exact automations that help you scale or whatever, like there's not too much you can do. You can systematize things, you can automate things, you can hire people, productize your service, and you can free up your time. Um, but if you really break it down, that's all you can do. So I think the easiest thing to do is to free up your time. Um, like for example, you here, it would be silly to clean your own condo when you have somebody here do it for $10.
Yeah.
Like that would be silly unless you want to. A step above that is like a lot of people get too perfectionist on like really low level stuff like setting up domains and emails, building lists. Like these things do require skill, but it's like, is it better to do it yourself, 100% perfect, or is it better to have someone else do it? That's 80%. Normally 80%. So then, hiring for low level tasks. And then above that, I mean, people love talking about automations because automation seems like it's not work, but automation is great, require maintenance. I think the first couple things for scalers be personal time, hiring low level tasks, and also productizing your service. Productizing your service, meaning if you're offering 10 things, try to offer 2. If you're offering 2 things, try to offer 1, right? It's much harder to build systems if you have a agency who does ads and cold email and website and this and that.
Yeah, this is actually one of the things I'm experiencing right now. Is like, would you say, Michael, as well? That once that the fulfillment starts to march in, one of the common problems, even your partner Felipe told me, is like people pause on their outbound campaigns. That's why they get stuck on the fulfillment. Let me pause the outbound campaigns first, and then you're stuck in like a dead month. And then
Yep.
what they don't realize is that there's like a cycle that you have to go through. Could you tell us a little bit more about that scenario?
Yeah, exactly what she said. And this happens all the time where, wow, outreach is great. We got all these clients. Oh shit, we have all these clients. Let's stop outreach. Okay, those clients are doing well now. Oh wait, we have no new sales. It's just this spinning cycle. So like your best bet is never stop outreach. I'm not gonna say you can't slow it down a little bit, but never stop it. You should always feel like you need to hire. I mean, when we were at like our most exponential scaling, it was chaos. It was constantly more clients, higher, 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 higher. Like it was just ongoing. But also like I had a partner that did a lot of our fulfillment, which that was nice because he could control that side of the business. It was just me, it'd be harder. But yeah, the kind of response that helped us scale was rather than stopping outreach, it was starting hiring.
Mm. Okay, that's kind of interesting too, because when you mentioned like you're growing with like with like multiple clients already, would you say as well like the I mean when you were at that situation, are there core parts that are mainly breaking when like that? I mean, does the fulfillment get harder?
The hardest part is like high level client communication. Um, that can be tricky because that's a hire that's quite expensive normally.
Yeah.
And it can be a bit scary. So that once you have somebody who can do high level client communication, meaning like on Zoom calls communicating with clients, that that was quite great. There are some things we never managed to like fully outsource or offboard, like me in sales. Never had a sales guy. It was always me. Script writing and GPT does a little bit for us, but mostly it's me. So there are some things we still haven't entirely hired for. Which if our goal is not to get the agency to $1 million a month.
Yeah.
But if it was, we probably would have to consider those things.
Absolutely. Now, I wanted to ask like a good question here, where let's imagine an agency owner with a cold email agency has a revenue between 10 to 20,000. What is the most what have you seen, or what's the best like employee count here like at this stage? Like, are you
I don't
could you
think
do it at 3 people, one
you can
people?
do that one person. I mean, I don't. I think it's too broad because you can have 4 clients at 5K. It can be just you, right?
Yeah.
I don't think there's a right or wrong answer here. Because also you can have a white label partner. You can have a contractor instead of employee. So, yeah, probably 2, 3 people.
2 to 3 people would be great. Okay, and I guess so. Once that they're trying to scale out, they freed out their time with like personal tasks. What is the first thing that you would eliminate or try to hire in like operations wise?
Operations, list building.
List building.
List building.
Okay.
Yeah.
Are the reason why list building first?
Time consuming, constant, recurring. Yeah, like take domain or email setup. Like that happens whenever you get a new client.
Yeah.
But list building is continuous no matter what, even if you're not counting new clients.
List building, but to clarify, you don't include the ideation there, right?
No.
Okay. So coming from, for example, Michael's the agency owner, ideation from you, and then if I were to be the list builder, I'll get the
And do the manual portion of the list, yeah.
okay.
And as you open up time, what I think should happen is, outbound is fantastic, but it stops when you stop. So I think as you open up time, you should look at more long-term marketing, which we always force time for long-term marketing, which is why we pulse from SEO, from YouTube, from interviews, from podcasts, right?
Yeah.
Like this interview probably will have no immediate ROI like 1 week, but when people search Michael Gardiner and they see us on 100 different podcasts, or when someone watches this 6 months later because the shelf life of video is longer,
Yeah.
like that compounds. And finding time for that long-term organic marketing can be very, very useful because, talking about like, oh, I stopped outreach, I have no clients. Like, I can stop outreach and I have all this old marketing and it still runs.
Got it. Okay. And speaking of scaling, right? So, you mentioned people love the word automation, but to clarify, on your perspective, when should they automate versus delegate, which means hiring more people?
Sure. I think a lot depends on complexity who you are. Like there's some things that I've automated by companies. I've had operators that have a background in code that are very smart, that love automation, that are incredibly technically savvy, that do things that most people would not be able to. Um, Automate the really easy stuff. When client fills out onboarding form, ping your Slack channel message or like a CRM, right? I would say that automate the things that don't intimidate you. Not that you should try to learn advanced automation, but so many people really love the idea of building overly complex things that realistically they probably can't maintain and that break really easy. Like I have a person in business that his name's Joey Gill and I paid for help over the years. And one thing that he told us was like, he doesn't use way too much automation because it breaks. Like it breaks. So like, don't build the coolest thing. Build the least fragile thing.
Absolutely. And a comment I wanted to add on this as well is when you're trying to automate things, you should also look at the time, like how frequent are you really using the automation? Because you might just be using it once a month when someone lands a new client, and then the real manual process would just take you 15 minutes. Like,
Sure.
is it really worth it to automate and just keep on maintaining, right? So that's one of the things too. And what about hiring? What are the main things that are you looking for? Because you could do like values based interviews or like skill based interviews. Like, what are you primarily looking when you are hiring for specific roles? Yeah.
People that are entrepreneurs. I think that's a common pitfall, hiring people that are entrepreneurs because it's easy to talk to them and you naturally like them, but they're going to leave. So for long-term roles, yeah, people that are entrepreneurs is a big thing for us. Um, Generally speaking, people that need consistent work tend to be better employees than like the average young dude. We have made this problem over and over where we hired a young ambitious guy where he's either too entrepreneurial or his family's a bad shop or like somebody of student debt or like a single mom or like a dad whose kids are in private school and has a mortgage. Like they have more of a reason to show up every day.
Okay. So like that's kind of a interesting point because like with standpoint wise, you kind of have to look. So are you? I would imagine. Are you asking them like? Are you getting to know them about their background when you're interviewing?
You can't directly ask those things because it would be inappropriate. That's not the
Yeah.
only thing we screen for. But I'm trying to think of an answer here. It's not just the basic thing. Because yes, we like check for internet speed. We check for confidence, their personality, their skills, their experience, their references. Those are all things that most people could figure out. But that's like one step beyond. We try to figure out a little bit. Normally I'll try to like get excited about entrepreneurship on a call. And if they get excited about it too, it's a little bit of a red flag for me. Because I don't want to be, this happened before. You take someone on, you train them, they get good.
Yeah.
You're like, great, I can start my business now. It's like I just wasted all this time on it. It doesn't mean they're a bad person. Sometimes they even know we're doing it. It's just human nature.
Absolutely. I understand that at all. Now, this is kind of a personal question, but the scaling. Talking about the scaling wise, like where do you see Grow B2B scaling in the next 3 to 5 years?
Grow B2B, I don't know. Grow B2B has always been kind of a hobby thing, so I don't really have any hard expectations for it. Yeah, it's Grow B2B has always been kind of a fun outlet for me because I don't depend on it. Anything I make from Grow B2B, the coaching part of the business, is like just fun money. So I enjoy it because I have no expectations for it. For the agency, the goal is to sell it, and we are introducing direct mail. The negative of cold email is cold email changes a lot, deliverability, and we are trying to diversify revenue outside of cold email into direct mail. Direct mail may seem very 90s and early 2000s, and it was, but pretty much no one does it now and works really well.
Yeah.
And there's also a huge barrier to entry because you need someone in the US to send, assuming you are targeting the US. So we've built out a small direct mail fulfillment team, and we're adding that as a service. And hopefully to get our revenue about 50% cold email, 50% mail, to then sell that business sometime next year.
Absolutely. So that's one interesting point too that Michael told me behind the scenes. But let's talk about, since we've already dived deeper into like the scaling part. Let's talk about the future of cold email and outbound in general. What are your thoughts on it? Like, where do you see this outbound going? Yeah, get us your thoughts.
Um, well, I won't talk too technically about deliverability, but I see deliverability as a regulation of too many people doing cold email. If it's too easy, it needs to be harder, right? That's just kind of the way it works, right? You have people are setting up 1,000 boxes with these tools and just spamming right away. Like, deliverability is a regulator of that. Google or Outlook are in a unique position where they want people to buy as many email accounts as possible to make money, but they don't want users not using their platforms. So it's always a balance. So I don't think cold email will ever go away. In terms of outreach changing, I think that most people are somewhere in the middle, and I think there's got two spectrums. There's the ultra technical spectrum, which is I'm using AI to do really advanced, sincere feeling personalization segmentation.
Yeah.
And I think the other side is very creative campaigns. Like I will be on a podcast or doing direct mail or whatever it may be. Now that middle ground is most dangerous for somebody that's in a low barrier industry. Do I think that cold email for someone that manufactures fire extinguishers and sells them to commercial buildings is really going to be affected by AI? No. There's 7 people that sell fire extinguishers probably, right? Like this is more for like the, low barrier to entry, high volume businesses that most people listening probably operate, such as an agency or consulting business.
Okay, got it. So to touch your point there, it's gonna be a lot more harder if it's much easier to enter. But what about like the process side of things? Would you say like, oh, email copy in particular, right? So like we got AIs now writing the tools or the copy for us. Like, do you see the email copy evolving or pushing towards a direction because there's an integration with AI now?
Yeah. Most people do personalization poorly, so I still think personalization can impact. A lot of the AI personalization is just really stupid. Like the one thing in personalization I think a lot of people have failed to get is tying you to them. What I mean by this is like, hey Lewis, I see you live in the Philippines. Heard Manila has a lot to do. Versus, hey Lewis, I spent 2 weeks in Manila, saw your hair as well. Right? Like one connects you to a prospect and one is just a statement. So like all the personalization we do tries to like connect me to a prospect. So I still think that will maintain. Copy being more direct, I think is good too. People generally know we're being pitched. 10 years ago, they didn't know we were being pitched. Even 5 years ago, they didn't always know we were being pitched. So it's like, do you have what I want and do you have it immediately? And then also social proof plays a big role in copy. Can I look you up and find interviews? Do you have accreditations? Do you have case studies? I know the companies you have case studies with? Social proof is becoming more and more important in outreach.
Got it. And talking about this subject as well, when let's give an audience some ideas. So if they were to start like a cold email agency right now, are there any things that you would what are the main tips that you would give to them?
In terms of client acquisition, I would say start local. I think selling to people that are in your town can be a great way to begin. I give this advice to a lot of people that, when you're first starting a company, there's not that many logical reasons to work with you. If there's somebody else that probably charges similar for results, so you have to lean on personal connections. And one of the easiest personal connections to lean on is to sell to people in your hometown. A large majority of the market chooses who to work with based on who's geographically around them. So they're going to chamber of commerce meetings or business meetups or door knocking. That's something I did a ton of when I first started. I just leveraged the hey, I'm a local guy.
Yeah, absolutely. That's a really great tip. And as well, are there any industries for those are just starting out, like they should just try out first that are easy to go
Uh,
get clients from?
I think it'd be pretty broad. I would just avoid like uh, healthcare, insurance, loans. Like for example, agencies. Like our agencies saturated for cold email. Yes, but if you get an agency, it's great. It doesn't matter. So it's hard to kind of like generalize some categories. It's very case by case.
Okay. And I also I wanted to add there as well, like think of the experiences that you've been with in the past, like leverage like the things with, because when I started the cold email, there's a niche that even even with like Grow B2B, my community, right? None of them are working in that industry, like security guard industry in particular. None of them can crack it because I've got the experience and to back it up already, because I was getting results prior to like joining these communities. So I guess leveraging your experience from the past could also one great thing. And Michael, to kick things off, like or to end things off, like anything you wanted to promote, or how can people find you to reach out to you? Guys?
Yeah, the best place to find me is on YouTube. YouTube links to every other social media I have. It links to DFI meetings, my agency, to Grow B2B, my coaching program. So yeah, YouTube is the source of everything else.
All right. Well, that's it for this podcast. Thank you so much, Michael.
Yeah, thank you, Lewis. It's great.
Appreciate you. Bye bye. Peace.